Now you're welcome along, football show. So Joe Molloy still here, Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent in studio. We were trying to remember there how long it had been.
A matter of weeks. I mean, it's not quite like a school reunion.
3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean,
if not 4.
Pretty crap in terms of a reunion discussion, but it had been a while though.
You'd kept in touch. I often get a sarky Dan McDonnell text when I'm on air.
Listen, to be fair, I'd often receive one from you, but I won't discuss what.
Sure.
Yeah.
When you're on air?
Not when I'm on air.
Oh, yeah,
no.
No, you love a good... Joe's on air now, so I'll text him some constructive feedback on the performance.
That is accurate.
Yeah.
No, you might text something like you might have read something interesting in the Sunday papers that you might want to discuss, for example.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
because like you might be on air about that and you might...
Want your
we
thoughts.
do talk sometimes.
No,
yeah.
we talk plenty. But I do know if I'm on air.
Yeah.
And the phone vibrates and I look down and see Dan McDonnell.
A mistake has just been made here.
I do a quick, what did I do? What did I say this time?
What have I said? Yeah.
What did we do?
I feel it doesn't portray me in a positive light. And yet, it is accurate.
It's so accurate.
So, like, you just sometimes need to embrace it. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm disappointed with myself.
I embrace it to the extent that I flick it open when I'm on air and have a quick glance just to see if I've made a
I'm just going to
mistake.
start now when you're on air, just sending you these funny pictures, you know, just like nonsense stuff, you know, some like viral rubbish, but that's just, you know, just...
International weekend upon us, Dan.
Yes, it is. Normally the first weekend of September, as I'm sure you know, but it's sort of pushed a bit back as part of this mad year that we have. Like there's normally like a window in September and a window in October. This year we just have one between the 2 months.
Well, even it's very... So we were just touching on this in the news round. So the Stephen Kenny's reign, his tenure will be much decided by next year. The Euro 2024 qualifiers. So the draw is on the 9th of October in Frankfurt. And then I was just having a glance trying to get my head around what is the schedule post World Cup, because everything leads to Qatar and I haven't thought too much beyond that. So in effect, the whole Euro 2024 qualifying campaign will be 10 match days from March to November. Now there will be a playoff obviously in the new year, but it's a really intense 7-8 months that will decide all in many ways for Stephen Kenny.
Yeah, and
it's full on.
Yeah, and they've actually UEFA have announced some of the regulations today. Like Russia aren't in 2024. So you say there's 10 match days. Now you are right, but I think there's like only 7 groups of 5. It's quite likely Ireland could end up in another. Like the percentage chance is weighted towards being like in another 5-team group, which is like 8 games, which is like that World Cup group with the one with Portugal, Serbia, Luxembourg, and Azerbaijan. So it's very important. But it's concentrated into a period, and it's sort of like, you know, has a sort of a knockout feel to elements of it. Like you lose your first 2 games, like Ireland have previously, and you're really behind the 8 ball very, very early. You don't have that time to, and sometimes it's deceiving. Like I think sometimes with Stephen Kenny, he's ended up in these 5-team groups, and the whole thing about win ratios and stuff. You know, you don't have your game against Andorra that like gets your stats up for like, you know, wins and competitive goals and all this. But as a result, it sort of means that every game is a really big one.
One other piece of news, Dan. I was reading in the Irish Independent by Dan McDonnell.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be a regular reader. He was saying the FAI on the point of finalising friendlies in November against Malta away, but the headline news would be Erling Haaland coming to Dublin.
Yeah, and this has been, to be fair, then it's been knocking around for a few weeks about these games are the ones that are floated, and like you're talking there about, say, the schedule, and it is a weird one that, and this is to do with probably games being lost in September, October, but you have these UEFA deals that you have to play a certain amount of games. So we're going to try to shoehorn in 2 friendlies between that window between the Premier League ending and the World Cup starting. In fact, it's possible that the game at Malta will be the same day the World Cup starts, so it's crammed in there. But the whole headline thing, as you say, is like Haaland, who of course isn't going to the World Cup. Norway didn't qualify. So you would assume then, if Ireland do end up playing Norway, the chances of them playing would be reasonably high, because they're not... It's not as if they're playing a friendly on Thursday and then going to Qatar on the Tuesday or something. Yeah. So
with kids running onto the pitch to Haaland at full time.
Yeah.
Malta versus the Republic of Ireland on the same day the World Cup starts really does feel like after the Lord Mayor's show.
It's a weird one, yeah. If it does happen to go ahead, like normally FIFA don't allow it, but of course everything with this World Cup in Qatar, I see Ian Herbert has done a big piece in the Mail. I almost meant to mention it off air. It's probably something to return to. He's done a big sort of expose piece after having been there, And
on Qatar.
yes, he was there for 5 days and just about like
Found great things, did he?
found that. Well, I was speaking to someone else who was out there quite recently, and they were describing the stadiums are finished and everything else is a building site. In fact, the roads are finished. It's obviously good. You need roads to go to stadiums, but everything else is not ready. But it just feels like, I don't know if people will be aware of this, but FIFA at the last minute decided to just change the date of the opening game by 24 hours just to bring it forward. Because they decided, maybe Qatar should actually be the first game. So this is how this World Cup has been done on the run, like completely been done on the run. And as a result, they can't complain if the friendlies clash with the first match.
Speaking of Haaland, by the way, just very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Paul O'Hare in the Irish Daily Star today. Duffer. So we'll touch on the FAI quarterfinals in more detail later on. I know you were at the one between Shelbourne and Bohemians, so it seems Duffer, big fan of Erling Haaland.
Yes.
So Sean Boyd, who obviously scored at the weekend, Duff was talking about him, and it seems Sean Boyd has been given a Damien Duff made Erling Haaland video. So Duff was saying, Haaland for me, best striker in the world. I've made a video, borderline a meeting on him, which lasts 15 minutes because I love him so much, said Damien Duff. Any striker that signs for the club, any young players, Gavin Hodgins, they've all seen it. It's just all positional play in the box. He's quick, he's strong, he can finish, but it comes down to positional play. The exact same as Lewandowski. The video I made for Sean, he has it on his phone. I think he watches it daily. His first goal on Sunday looked like something you'd see from Haaland. It was out of the player's eye line, go into the goal, come in, back early, nobody sees him. He put the ball into the net, but Haaland, yeah, we reference him a lot. It's kind of interesting.
It's funny, it's like we've planned this except we haven't. It's a perfect segue, but myself and Johnny with our League of Ireland Central podcast, we had Sean Boyd on today, so that's coming out tomorrow. Nice. And we were talking to Sean Boyd and Luke Byrne from
Does he watch the video every day like Duff thinks?
Yes, okay. And apparently Duff speaks about Haaland and De Bruyne all of the time in training. They were speaking about it today, just like it's a regular thing that he brings up. And people might not be familiar with Sean Boyd, but actually Sean Boyd's physique, like he's almost 6'5". He's a striker playing through the middle. So it's not like, you're not showing Haaland clips to your number 10, like your playmaker, but showing it to someone like Boyd would be incredibly relevant. And Boyd was saying, like, yeah, it's not the obvious things. And I said, like, Duff makes the clips himself, like Duff goes in and cuts it and makes it. So I
feel like Duff's making the sandwiches.
Yeah, it does everything.
Dressing room.
Like Luke Byrne was saying that, like, and Luke Byrne was his coach when Duff was managing the underage team, the under 17s. So like knows him incredibly well. He's talking about Duff's the hardest working person he's ever met in football. Yeah. He said at 11 o'clock at night you get a WhatsApp clip from Damien Duff, something he's just done himself, something he's watched himself. So I know some of that can read like quotes after a match that are like, they sound great, but it is actually reflective of the real deal. But he is a big Haaland fan. Just unfortunate Waterford Shells in the Cup semi-final. I think it's on the same time as Liverpool and Man City, so they're not going to be able to like watch Haaland. Like, they're going to have to try and get to the Cup final themselves. Yeah, for
something that wasn't planned, that worked out bloody well.
Yeah.
So we're reacquainting ourselves with the Irish team. It's funny, we didn't email in on a slight tangent.
I heard it, yeah.
I thought, like, I related to it a touch. I do have that same sense sometimes of, okay, jogging my memory and where are we and where were we and who played well.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen quite a few of the players. Like, I didn't know Jason Knight was playing. Is it right back or
right back?
Right wing back?
Right back.
See, I've heard right wing back. Well, across the last couple of days.
I'm trusting the Derby Telegraph, who've been covering them on the basis. I haven't seen Derby myself this year. Point
proven. So it'd be hard for me to say how's Knight's recent form. You're working off reports as opposed to if we were all being able to watch them all the time. So just to re-jog where we are, Nations League, Ukraine 7 points, Scotland 6 points. They've both played 3 games, and then Ireland 4 games, 4 points. That win against Scotland and then the draw away to Ukraine has really plucked a sketchy situation out of the fire. So the previous windows, we had the friendlies in March with the Belgium 2-2 draw and the Troy Parrott winner against Lithuania, and then we're coming off the back of our 10 days in June, which started badly. We saw Ireland lose to Armenia 1-0 away, 92nd in the world, beaten in Yerevan, but that was off the back of an 8-match unbeaten run coming in, so there was a degree of, okay, let's see how we go. And then that Ukraine, badly affected Ukraine side were 1-0 winners in Dublin, and it was a fairly lethargic kind of an Irish performance. And then there was not pressure for his job, but there was like a degree of pressure nonetheless.
Just the unease, because of course, the point was before those 4 games, the contract had been signed.
Yes.
So it was like, so there's no more debate about his future. Two games later, it's like those shadowy FAI board members who weren't happy before have suddenly decided.
So, well, we had Scotland 0, Ireland 3 in Dublin. Obafemi, Troy Parrott very much to the fore. A change in midfield shape, which we'll come on to in a second.
Yeah.
And then against the Ukraine best team, or stronger team than the one in Dublin, a 1-1 draw away. And suddenly those last 2 results, all is well again. And that's how we pitch up into this window.
Yeah, and like I did listen to that text, and you do hear discussions around this time, and I suppose like I'm a dreadful example because like I probably am paid to remember like things that happened, in the June window, like incredibly like off the top of your head, and you'd sort of hear some things, and you'll see it now when a team is named and someone will be like, the Ireland team will be named on Friday, I'd say James McLean will be in it, and there'll be like hundreds of messages below the FAI, so, why is McLean in? Why? And you're like, well, do you not remember the games in the summer when he actually came in and made a brilliant impact after 2 games, and that's possibly why he's in the team. And we had that previously with Jeff Hendrick, who'd actually been playing quite well for Kenny, although he's probably one of the players that would be in difficulty this week because of what happened in the last window, or not. We'll see. I suspect that he'll be a talking point later in the week either way. But there is that sense of, and particularly those 4 games in June were like in a 10-day, it was almost like a tournament, that you didn't necessarily have a week to sort of digest one. Like even between that amazing performance against Scotland, or really good performance against Scotland, 3 days later, I mean, John Egan didn't play in Ukraine, Shane Duffy, but people remember Darragh Lenihan made his debut, Darragh O'Shea, Scott Hogan started, like there was a lot happened in that. It was like a tournament as opposed to a traditional qualifier.
Well, can I, because I just looked back at the teams again, can I jog your memory and you can tell us how that informs what we're about to see? So what jumps out, the Armenia defeat and then the Ukraine defeat back to back. I mean, the most obvious difference there is that it was very much Cullen, and he's an ever-present. So it's Cullen in midfield with Hendrick, and it's a front 3 of Ogbene, Callum Robinson and Troy Parrott. So I guess the deal there is Hendrick and Cullen in midfield, and Callum Robinson drop in and help a little bit when needed. So across those 2 games, it became apparent Callum Robinson not in the form of old, where he was scoring goals for fun and just wasn't himself. So those 2 games, defeat to Armenia, defeat to Ukraine, Hendrick and Cullen, Callum Robinson maybe dropping back in. And then for the Scotland game, it was all change. And what we had in midfield was a change of formation. We pretty much went to you can call it 3-5-2 or a 5-3-2, depending on your persuasion. But either way, it was Cullen, it was Malumbi in, and it was Knight in. So like a proper midfield 3 and 2 up front, Obafemi and Parrott against Scotland. And it was Parrott who stayed on with, as you mentioned, Hogan against Ukraine subsequently. So Malumbi, Cullen, Knight started against Scotland with the 2 up top. They started again against Ukraine with the 2 up top. So the question, or what I'm putting to you, is the first 2 games we had Hendrick and Cullen in midfield and a striker of sorts dropping deep.
I would have been Parrott dropping in more so than Robinson in those games. Like it would have been the sort of the 3-4.
Yeah, although he didn't even play against Ukraine at home.
No, sorry, he didn't. But in the first game, it would have been
Parrott dropping
in.
So someone dropping in, basically. Yeah. Whereas it seems Stephen Kenny looked at the Ukraine defeat and the Armenia defeat and he said, I'm going to bolster midfield a touch more. Cullen, Malumbi, Knight, in you go. I'm not sure, did Hendrick have a knock or was it just down to form? But either way, that split strikers with 3 dedicated midfielders, I mean, there's been many a time where we've said, is this now Stephen Kenny's approach going forward? But that's where we leave off in June.
Yeah, and like I was actually writing about this for tomorrow. Like I think there's 2.
Very in sync.
Yeah, I like that. There's 2 elements to it, like, and you've honed in big time on the formation aspect of it there. But I think a big thing about that window for Kenny was an element of form as well too. And it's what, like you said, like continuity in international football is something that he's probably strived for from the start. Remember all the time the COVID, like the chopping and changing, and never picked the same team, back to back ever. And we would have sat here and had discussions about he needs a settled side. I mean, I'd hear John Giles say it a lot, he needs a settled team. But maybe what happened in June was you can argue he was too loyal to a settled team from before when Callum Robinson hadn't played for a number of weeks. Ogbene's season at Rotherham had finished extremely early, and Hendrick hadn't really played either. And I think he was probably always going to freshen it up after 2 games of that window, or maybe 1 or 2 games of that window. But it wasn't the case that Hendrick had a knock or anything like that. I think it was Benny actually did, but I think he probably would have been dropped anyway, because I think there was a sense of, this was my best team before, but it's now not my best team. And Obafemi is this guy who's in incredible form right now, but he hadn't played for Ireland effectively since his debut. So you can't necessarily pitch the form guy in, or so we thought. And then in hindsight, you're thinking, oh, maybe that's what you do. Like, to what extent is continuity important here? You know, like, so and that sort of brings you to a big point for this week. And I think this is a big point around the game on Saturday, in the sense of, Ireland beat Scotland 3-0 very recently, and they did it with this particular side. You know, all the outfield players are available. They played in that game. Kelleher is not. His own player is absent. So you can go with exactly the same thing, but then is that actually in danger of making the mistake from before, in the sense that Obafemi now is in this difficult club situation where he's played 2 minutes of football in the month of September, and Ogbene, who in sort of power rankings terms was struggling, is now flying at championship level with Rotherham, is having probably the best season of his career. And can you risk benching someone like him on form? But there's 2 elements to it. I think the 3-5-2 was definitely an important tweak, bolstering midfield, but also I think Malumbi's energy and aggression in midfield versus a half-cooked and undercooked Jeff Hendrick. I think now Hendrick is playing regularly, so there's a few decisions he's going to have to make there. And I think it's as much about players' form as about formation.
And it's so interesting. So again, this is what he's trying to figure out: the weighting you give to, you know, it applies to Duffy and it applies to
Big
Coleman.
Duffy, yeah.
You know, last game for me, where they were good, like a Callum Robinson, versus their interim.
Yeah.
Their form in the interim. So he's asked about that situation in the press conference. It's a good time to play that clip. So he's asked about lots of players, unfortunately, at the moment are just not getting football week in, week out, and to what extent there's a hard and fast rule on this issue. Like, is it you have to play for your club if you want to start for Ireland, versus rewarding previous form for Ireland?
It's not ideal that any of the players that are not playing in their teams, it's not an ideal situation, particularly over a long period of time. I just can't have it. I don't think I can just come in with a consistent rule, one size fits all rule. You know, we'll have to judge each case on its merits, the individual strengths of the team, what we need, and but you wouldn't want to go in with too many players not playing matches. And we even learned a little bit about that in June, you know, where players had come in and have that 5-week break and maybe had not been in their team for a couple of weeks before that and starting, and so that these are it's part of the learning curve for us.
Yeah, it sure is, and they're figuring out who can probably do it without having played a lot of games, and who needs the games at club level to perform then for Ireland. And there's, again, I think he's right to say there's no hard and fast rule. If we work backwards for a second, so the memory of June is Obafemi and Parrott. You know, like if you were to kind of say what got people excited.
And Nathan Collins, to be fair. Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. For sure. So Obafemi is playing. He has 1 goal in 8 games. Troy Parrott is also playing. He has no league goals in 10. He has 1 League Cup goal, which came a couple of weeks ago. Although the context for Parrott is Preston aren't a free scoring outfit. So
3 goals, I think, in 10 games.
They may not be creating all that many chances for him. And Robbie Brady did say that Parrott's general form his general play is very good. So even though they're not scoring lots of goals, just by dint of the fact that Obafemi and Parrott are playing games, added to what they did against Scotland, are they pretty much nailed on as the front two, do you think? I'm not
so sure. I mean, it comes back to your text from earlier on. Speak to people who are watching Preston a lot, and they'll say Parrott's actually playing pretty well. Like, and I've heard Parrott's.
Brady said that today.
Yeah. But I suppose another teammate would probably say that. But
sure.
I've heard it discussed in the context. It was a Brian Kerr maybe on the weekend. It was context of, you know, Parrott's struggles, or like there was that sort of tone hanging over it. But I don't know if that's actually felt by people who've been seeing Parrott every week. You know, that's all these things are opinions, I suppose. But I think Parrott will play. I think Obafemi is the one where it comes back to that question mark over, again, does he need that bit? Like, last season was the first full season of football he played, and if he's lost a bit of that, do you then go with Ogbene instead? Like Ogbene, who's He's been incredible for Rotherham. You know, incredible maybe is a bit strong actually, but he's been very good. He scored 5 goals in 11 games in the Championship. He's now playing up front for Rotherham. I watched him play against Middlesbrough last week. He was sharp. And again, is this a game where Ireland are going to be on the front foot as much, or is it a game where they might be under a small bit more pressure at times, and actually Ogbene as an out ball could be, you know, with that form plus maybe a slightly different ask, could he get the nod ahead of Obafemi? Now, Kenny will probably get hammered if he does that and it doesn't work out, you know, and Ireland lose, because how can you look? It looks like Obafemi is the best player, but being the best player, you know, I would say Obafemi probably has more natural ability than Ogbene, but does that necessarily mean this comes back to that equation of, you know, form versus sort of fitness or sharpness or whatever?
Obafemi's last game was 17th of September. There's this issue now he's having with his manager, who said he has to win back the trust of...
2 minutes in the 17th of September. His last one prior to that was in August.
Okay, so he may not be match sharp as such. But so Parrott playing lots, not scoring. Obafemi having this issue of late, but before that played 8. I just would have thought what has to loom large for them is, well, hang on, the last time these two played together, magic things happened.
No, I know.
So, like, surely, I mean, if Callum Robinson deserved another crack at the whip in June, then surely Obafemi and Parrott together.
But it was a mistake to do that with Robinson, giving him that other crack at the whip. Like I think that's the nub of the sort of dilemma. It's a case of, yes, maybe I should have pitched Obafemi in earlier in June, but maybe now is the time that you don't do that.
Fair
you
enough.
know, and it's also like it was also against Scotland that they did it, and which in one way is great. It's like you can have it in your head. They have something over Scotland, but Scotland probably weren't prepared for that. There was unexpected. What are they prepared for this time? Like, what's their preparations geared about?
It was on Monday, and so in June Scotland were heartbroken after losing to Ukraine in the playoff. And now they arrive into this with Steve Clarke under a touch of pressure and revenge very much on their minds and far more focused on Hampden Park. So it's a very different Scotland. Okay, well, so we don't know who's going to play up top. I presume Cullen, Malumbi and Knight will get another go as the midfield.
See, there you go. Stephen Kenny's always picked Jeff Hendrick when he's been fully fit and available. So I just think Hendrick versus Malumbi, I think, is probably the decision there.
Okay, fair enough. And then the back, let's call it the back 5 just for easiness sake. So his most used trio, Collins, Duffy and Egan. So Collins and Egan fine?
Oh, they'll definitely play.
Fit, healthy, all good. And then Duffy is on the bench for Fulham.
Yeah.
But he's worked well with
two lads. This is the key one. I think Doherty will be right wing back, and I think McLean will be left wing back. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brady come in against Armenia, where Ireland probably have more of the ball, and your sort of distribution from left wing back will be very important. I think it's more likely to be McLean and Doherty. The third choice in the back is between 3 players really, between Darragh O'Shea, Shane Duffy and Seamus Coleman. And it has a positional implications for Nathan Collins, because Nathan Collins, that solo run and that amazing performance against Ukraine came from the centre of the back 3, where of course he was taking the ball and driving on, and sort of, you know, your centre player in the back 3, their passing is very important. That's obviously been the concern about Shane Duffy at times. So if you play Collins in the middle of the 3, then you can't really play Duffy on the right of him. It comes down to O'Shea or Seamus Coleman.
Duffy likes to play in the middle.
Yes, I think he has played at times on the right, but I'd be surprised if Kenny went that way.
He feels a bit vulnerable out there.
Now you do have Matt Doherty potentially there, a more natural defender than, say, Alan Brown, although Alan Brown was exceptional, although he probably had a bad moment for the Ukraine goal, the last goal Ireland conceded. But that's the equation. Like, it's a case of, like, Darragh O'Shea was very good against Ukraine on the left side, and there would be an argument that a right footer is able to sort of spread diagonals from the left, cutting inside, helps the team in terms of its passing range, and you could play Egan on the right. Like, that's an option that you could sort of utilise. So that's the decision, and it's a big part of, again, it comes back to what we've started this chat around, is how fit do you think Shane Duffy is? Like, I know previously managers wouldn't be that concerned about a player match sharp in September because they'll have played games in pre-season and they're not that far behind, but this is a little bit later into September. As I mentioned at the start, this is, 7 league games have been played and he hasn't been involved in them.
Would you expect Duffy to get in?
I think if you put a gun to the head, at Fulham, well, he was signed there on loan, but they've stuck with the two centre halves who were there when they got promoted. But I would assume the plan is he'll come in at some stage to play. But in terms of Friday and what I think will happen, I keep changing my mind on this, but I just wonder, will he still go for Duffy with Collins on the right side and Egan on the left? And I'm thinking, okay, Andy Robertson isn't playing, but Scotland do have Kieran Tierney, who's like an exceptional player, and I just wonder, Collins and Doherty on the right side of the pitch, gives you a great. I mean, that's a very strong sort of combination. Egan and McLean have an understanding on the other side, and while Duffy, a criticism at times might be of him in the central of the three, they might drop back a little bit too deep sometimes. I feel like this is a game where Ireland might have to do a bit more defending, and
there'll be balls in the box for
it
sure.
May well be if it's Shea Adams playing. Duffy did very well in the physical stuff in the first game. The issue we had was playing out once or twice. But I suppose that's.
Well, you do forget from that Scotland game that was it Scott Brown?
Yeah, that was John McGinn.
John McGinn. If John McGinn had taken one of those many gifts, we were very different complexion.
Sliding doors moment, and it came from sort of elaborate stuff at the back, which if you can see the goal from it becomes, it forms the basis of a sort of a philosophical argument that people will form of you're just lump it.
Scott Brown's still playing for Scotland?
Scott Brown is now the manager of Fleetwood Town.
Yeah, I was thinking he's unlikely.
Yeah, I mean, I know these things fade into memory a little bit too far, but it's taking you back to, you think the game took place in 2015 or something.
I was thinking, is he that evergreen that he's still doing it for Scotland?
When he was playing, he wasn't necessarily getting onto the ball like John McGinn at the edge of the box, sort of sweeping a left foot or just wide. But
did Billy Gilmore play in Dublin?
Gilmore, I think Gilmore did play. I mean, this is the thing. I think it was Gilmore. I remember because it was Grant Handley in defence. I think he's missing. They struggled badly at the back, but Robertson played. Tierney was unavailable for that one. I think Gilmore played, but they got because they got bullied a bit. Like Malumbi, actually, that's the thing. He was a bit of a disruptor. There and caused a few
brain
problems.
plays tricks. If you'd said to me now, which industrious Scottish midfielder passed up in those chances against Ireland?
It's when you start saying to me, do you remember Gordon Jury had that chance in the first half? That's when it's a little more concerning.
Oh dear. Football on Off the Ball is brought to you by Skywatch, Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more live on Sky Sports. Dan staying with us. Any text thoughts to 53106. Now you're very welcome back. A few texts in. I hate doing this. I'm reading them blind. No. And somebody says Ogbene was never struggling. I was at the home game against Ukraine. He was by far our best player, only lost his place because of injury, in my opinion, our best striker.
No, that's an opinion. I don't think Ogbene had a great game in Yerevan, personally. I don't think. No. Yeah. I don't think he was at his peak in that window, and in fairness to him, Rotherham I think had finished the season in April. I think there was mixed reviews on his performance against Ukraine. He got some good reviews in some places and not so much in others. I didn't think he was terrifically good.
Okay.
No.
I misread a text, so now it makes sense to me. The lack of self-awareness of what we were both wearing. Well, lads, the shirts. Are you on your way home from Garth Brooks or what, says Mick and Tala?
No, didn't make it.
A surefire sign of people who are not buying clothes very often. These were in fashion, maybe.
Well, you actually live in the same area. Did you encounter any of the Garth Brooks traffic?
Did I what?
I went for a walk, encountered the human traffic. A lot of people.
Those
lads selling the hats did well out of that, didn't they? I think every character who was going, I mean, they just needed a hat.
Everyone got dressed up for it, didn't they?
The hat was the equivalent of people buying, people who buy the headband going to Croke Park who never go to a game, but I need something. So there's just two lads nearby for me, they're in their sort of jeans and shoe, as Richie McCormick would say, but they didn't. Their look wasn't complete. Got the two hats on the run, probably paid whatever the going rate was, and off they went.
Yeah,
but no, I've never been to. I don't
get it at all.
Tell you what, you're doing the wrong game.
I know.
Do the walkout for that. Bit of an introduction. We're talking about this last week. Someone 400,000 people went. I know some people went twice.
Probably more people than who vote.
I mean, I see some people who've gone, by the way, this is a complete tangent. Some people who've gone who clearly have no interest in that. It's just the event of the Garth Brooks concert became a thing.
Yeah.
Do you know, there's some people who have How many of these people have a Garth Brooks tune on their Spotify or music collection?
Well,
a lot of northern cars though as well, it must be said.
I wouldn't pretend
Big
to
up
be able
north.
to kind of pierce the Garth Brooks bubble, but my sense of people around my age going is like real nostalgia. This is what we listen to in the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a certain ironic, oh, let's go.
Do you think it was ironic? Oh, no.
But like, sorry, ironic's the wrong word. But
A lot of
like,
people are big time into it.
a nostalgic, oh, we listen to that in the car, mum and dad, travelling down the country to our grandparents.
Yeah.
That's where we fell in love with Garth. But we don't listen to him on Spotify.
But it's like 5 to 10% of the population of the island was there.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't know what to say about it.
Well, just stop dressing like him then.
Someone claiming to be Aidan O'Riordan is texting.
Yes.
Sat beside you at a game.
Shell's Bows on Sunday.
Verify that.
He was
okay,
undercover. Yeah.
Yeah, sat beside Dan at the Bows Shells game. Can confirm he was there early. Didn't leave early and was still on holidays.
That was correct. It was my last day of holidays, but I strolled down the road to Talca. Very pleasant Sunday afternoon. Apart from anyone affiliated at the Bows, I heard you said there's a lot of angry Bows fans around the place. I assumed there was a video you might have seen of Bows fans abusing their players, but
Well, I've spoken to 2 Bows fans, and one of them told me he hasn't been as mad at a bunch of players since Tommy Lyons' Dublin.
that's definitely Rory O'Connor, right? I met him. I wasn't working, so I can say this. I met him for a drink afterwards, and
A rant.
with his family. They were
Disgusted.
not well at the time.
Yeah. Were Bows?
I mean, they were
abject?
extremely bad. Like I was making this point to someone earlier. Like the whole football commentary, the whole nature of it, and we see it with Ireland. Like there's extremes, right? A team wins. And I'd probably veer into it myself, like talking about the Scotland performance. That was incredible. No, it was a very good performance, but you win, so it makes it incredible. But if a team loses, it's dreadful. Like Ireland against Ukraine at home actually wasn't dreadful. They just lost. They weren't great.
That was very lethargic.
Yeah, lethargic, absolutely. But Bows on Sunday were genuinely dreadful.
Okay.
Like appallingly bad. Like, do you know, like people just overreact. And I was like, no, this was particularly bad.
Okay.
And as bad as I've seen for a team whose season depends on it, like that from the first minutes, you didn't need to be sort of doing very sophisticated analysis. It was just Shells are a team. They are up for this. They're and Bows at the moment are not a team, and they were exposed. But their fans, they were not happy. There was a great bit where a lot of fans left early, so the Shells PA called it out. Would they, do you know that shout out? Would the remaining Bows fans stay for 15 minutes after the game?
Because you showed me a video when the Bows players went to applaud the away fans. They were told in no uncertain terms what.
Yeah, and you have mixed views on that, don't you? But I think like people who probably pay in my opinion, they're entitled to vent. Sometimes it goes too far. But Jordan Flores, one of the players who people might remember from his incredible goal for Dundalk a couple of years ago, that goal that went around the world.
Yeah.
Like he actually went right up to them, tried to reason with them, to talk to
Never
them.
goes well.
I think he actually got more credit for doing that relative to maybe others who.
Then that would suggest that they hadn't lost all sense of themselves. Often I think when you see players get closer to fans, it actually heats things up and it doesn't tend to calm down. It tends
Yeah,
to
I
go
think
one way.
James Talbot, who's injured, who was in the Ireland squad, he was not involved. He's still injured, but he was over as well trying to talk to. But anyway,
Right.
Emotions were high of a Sunday afternoon.
We're going off track. Well, you were spotted anyway. So there you
I
go.
was
And
there,
obviously
yeah.
let everyone know I'm on my holidays and I'm
Yeah,
still here.
just to be clear, I am a football man.
Indeed.
I'm not just doing this for cash.
Lads, Billy Bremner killed us in June. What are we going to do about him this time around?
Billy Gilmore come off the bench, by the way. I was just checking that in the ads.
Yeah.
Scott McTominay played, which I actually.
Did he?
Yeah, he did.
You know, that is such a sliding doors moment, that game, because Scotland had more shots, more possession. Ireland were just lethal. And we scored a calibre of goal that we're not going to score routinely.
Yeah, no, but I think it was the right result, though. It wasn't like you had those early chances, but it wasn't a smash and grab. But I know it was one of those things where Ireland, at times under Kenny, I actually think they've started a lot of games quite well.
Yeah.
And then never scored. Like they've not scored in that period, and then the game has got worse as it's gone along. But that was one where they scored when they had a little moment, and then it just ignited.
Well, it sure did ignite. Before we get too sidetracked here, just a few other bits and pieces. So Andrew Bomadelli out injured, which is why we were talking about, is it Duffy or who goes in? Some more Stephen Kenny to bring people. So Robbie Brady is the maybe feel-good story of the window. He's back in an Irish squad after 18 months away. He's trust in his fitness and his body again, and he's playing well for Preston. At left wing back?
Yeah.
So Stephen Kenny was talking about Robbie Brady.
It's competition for place. There's obviously a few tight decisions around, and that's what you want. And we have a very good training session today, and that was competitive, and that was a good day today for us. Robbie, at the moment we'd see him as a left wing back, because that's where he's been playing for a period. It's difficult just to shift into another position at international level from club level when you haven't played there in a long time. But you're right, there's no reason why he couldn't fit into a sort of left of a 3-5-2, which would have been what he was probably born to play. But definitely he's been playing a left wing back at that level, and I think that's where we see him.
So naturally, given the opposition on Saturday and given the fact that the win against Scotland in June was maybe the high point or close to it of Stephen Kenny's tenure, he was asked for his thoughts on why June against Scotland went so well, and obviously thoughts as well on Saturday.
It was a very good performance, and it wasn't perfect. We conceded a couple of chances in the game, and there's areas in that performance we can improve on. There's numerous areas we can improve on, but it was a very, very good performance. But we have to move on from it. That was then. Now, and we've got to go to Hampden very determined, because their home record, Scotland's home record, is excellent, and we're going to have to put in a really brilliant performance to get a result there, and that's what we're trying to do.
So how good are Scotland is a question. Obviously got to play off for a World Cup, which suggests a real upturn under Clark, and then he seemed to be on the end of a huge amount of criticism for certainly the game in Dublin, and I guess the performance against Ukraine wasn't great either. So Pat Nevin on Monday, we were just trying to compare the two squads, and I was making the point that in Bazunu and Collins, Ireland have two players now in the Premier League that play with a certain kind of certainty or routinely, and we were totting up. So the Scots have 10.
Yeah, I did that myself actually earlier. Yeah,
big number,
and they're missing one or two as well. Who that's 10 in that squad, and there's a couple who were absent who would also play quite regularly.
Now Nevin, in response to that, said yes, and that is good. That said, we struggle for a goal scorer, and we're a little light in the centre of defence. I mean, who's not struggling for a goal scorer, I suppose? But
Ireland are certainly not light in the centre of defence. But that is a striking thing. There's definitely a feeling you can get at Scotland in that department. And you asked generally how good are Scotland, and I think at times there's been a criticism of Clark that he would be at times viewed as a conservative coach. And I heard Pat strikingly, they almost feel it's a golden generation of sorts. This Scotland team, without sort of overplaying it. But there is a really good crop. But again, that classic thing of they've got two in the same position, like Robertson and Tierney, for example. And John McGinn is a high class player. And I mean, you mentioned the Premier League players, but they also have some good Celtic players as well too. You have a strong Celtic team at the moment as well. Although they don't necessarily always play depending on what they do. Callum McGregor actually played in Dublin, for example, but they sometimes rotate it. But yeah, they're okay. Their home form is strong, is something Stephen Kenny has spoken about. They are playing Ukraine tomorrow, which is the thing. And the slight thing about Scotland, and there is sometimes we know this ourselves. A manager's cycle in an international career is you have your high, you have your up, and you surprise people. And there's a slight feeling that Steve Clark is maybe coming down off that now, to the point where maybe they're in that. Maybe we just needed a change vibe, and if they were to get a bad result against Ukraine tomorrow, then they could be in a fragile place on Saturday. That's a sort of a glass half full take on them, and Ireland could actually capitalise on that. But yeah, they've good midfield players, but yeah, their end product, I think it's easy to see a scenario where they don't score on Saturday, because that Ireland can manage things well in that area of the pitch. Because that's where Ireland do have some very strong players, but they have to do it more than the Premier League.
Well, I guess their best chances against Ireland were
from Irish
possession
errors. Now, they were after losing a World Cup playoff a couple of days earlier, so that's a pretty important caveat.
So just and then I'll ask you the same question, really. I mean, the importance of this for Stephen Kenny, and like you're talking Steve Clarke, if he has a bad Nations League window, what does that mean for him? So same, I guess, endlessly applies to Stephen Kenny. But here is Stephen Kenny just giving reflections on how he saw that last June window and the importance of this one.
A mixed window, if you like, whatever. We started slowly and disappointed, and then we finished strongly and did brilliantly against, obviously, the win against Scotland 3-0 and the performance in the Ukraine. Both games in Ukraine were very, very evenly contested, and I think so. It's a big game for us. It's a great game, Ireland against Scotland in the Nations League in Hampden Park. It's it's a famous venue, and we're delighted to be going there. And Scotland qualified for the European Championships previously, with a lot of players playing at the high end of the Premier League, and they're a very strong team, and we're looking forward to playing against them. And we're getting better all the time. We definitely feel that, and against some of the top teams, we played very well against Portugal twice, and Belgium and teams of that ilk. So we're looking forward to the game on Saturday.
So these two games and the two friendlies, what do they mean for Stephen Kenny, the general mood music around him and the team as we head into 24?
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, they were very important games, first and foremost, in the context of Ireland finishing second in the Nations League group really matters. Outside chance of being second seeds for the Euros draw, but more likely about your finishing position to have a bit of a better chance of a playoff in the back pocket if things don't go well next year. So there is an importance there, which means that if you get a bad point return, if Ireland somehow ended up finishing bottom in the group, which would require pretty much, I think, losing to Armenia again, or other results going in such a way that Armenia have got good results elsewhere, then Kenny's probably dealing with a little bit of the crisis stuff, but not in a way that I think he would be vulnerable to some dramatic change. So we had this before. We thought the Kenny referendum thing on every game would end with the contract, but it hasn't.
We often
every bad result, I like the same, and it goes both ways, right? Like there'll be an extreme of good reaction, probably at times that can be exaggerated to good performances too. But you just know if it's a bad result on Saturday. I mean, the same people will come out and who haven't said much in a while, but they will come out with their sort of previous criticisms repeated, which is fine.
But you would like the team to get to a baseline where the Armenia type results aren't happening.
Yeah, and in some ways the Armenia game, it's not that it's the bigger of the two, because like Scotland, Ireland is it's a big game, but it is worth mentioning like Kenny's downfall, or Kenny's, if you were to judge Kenny on the basis of the games against bigger teams, I think the review would be reasonably favourable. Yeah. The issue has been Luxembourg at home, Azerbaijan at home, Armenia away. Yeah. Games where teams have said, let's let them have the ball in the large part, and they're not good enough to play through us. You'd imagine Armenia will probably try something similar next Tuesday, and that's why probably to maybe banish some demons, like probably Kenny's team with a view to next year need to come out at home against a weaker side and sort of stamp on them a bit, and really assert themselves. So I always felt the way that the games are, like if Ireland, whatever happens in Scotland to a degree within reason, if they finish assertively against Armenia next Tuesday, the critics will remain, but we will just go on, and Kenny will ultimately be judged by the Euros campaign next year, which I think is going to happen either way now, regardless of what results happen. It's all coming down to that draw and those 8 games or 10 games, as you mentioned.
What was the when they wore the blue jerseys, was it against Qatar where they were just really dominant at home? Yeah. That felt like there's something really good happening with this team, like the way they kept possession and picked them apart. That kind of a performance would be very welcome. We are pretty much out of time. Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent. I will I don't know when I'll talk to you. I'll see you
next week,
Tuesday, Monday, you're in Monday next week.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, I'll chat to you then. So we'll review Scotland, look ahead to Armenia. Thanks very much.
No worries.
Football show here on Off the Ball is brought to you by Sky. Watch Premier League, WSL, EFL, Scottish Premiership and more live on Sky Sports.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch every live Premier League game this season on Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports.